Hey everyone, Bryan here. Welcome back to another episode of the Driveway Marketing Podcast. Today we've got Tersh Blissett. Did I say that right?
Yep, Tersh Blissett.
All right, very cool. With this, and honestly, in our pre-call, we went completely on a complete tangent. I think you guys are gonna love it. So, for those of you guys that know me outside of the podcast, which I hope a bunch of you do, you realize, and if you listen to one of the early podcasts, you talk about I got a guy, right? So, Tersh also has got a guy, and so we're gonna talk about as a home service business owner when you're pulling your trucks or cars or your MyBox into people's driveways, how can you utilize remote? And remote means anything, right? It could be not in your office. It could be in Iowa, could be in Philly, could be in the Philippines, could be in Latin America. It doesn't matter, right? How can you go starting to think about things you can do? Because Church was told something you can't do, which I thought was hilarious. A lot of people told me the same thing. And then also really about the, hey, they sound far. Well, I live in Florida and the people, a lot of my friends who are Cubans and Latins, they also sound like they're Latins because they're Latins. And the people from Haiti sound Haitian because they're from Haiti. And the people from New Jersey sound foreign because they're from Jersey. As a Jersey guy, I can say that. Um, so so you said you've been doing it for a while. So tell us a little bit about, kind of I know you've got a bunch of businesses. So you're in the business, right? So you are an operator. So you're running plumbing, HVAC,
Mhm.
electrical, right? So the challenge is always, I need to do more with less, or I need to do more and I can't find anybody, right? So
Right.
kind of talk to us, tell us the story of, okay, someone's got to answer the phone, someone's got to send follow-ups. Like, how did you start? Everyone thought you were nuts. So imagine me, I was doing that in 1997. You're not listening to it was before Google
Mhm.
that I was doing that. People thought I was completely off the rails.
Oh,
So
yeah.
people thought I was sending work to dirt huts and no windows and other story. But
Yes.
again, listen to the foundational episodes. You'll hear why that was complete crap. But from your point of view, so what made you decide to get started? And then I'd love to hear some successes. And always we want to share some failures because there's flame outs all
Sure.
the time.
Mhm.
And the whole point is sharing this is so that you don't have to do the crap that we already did before, right? That's the whole point of leapfrogging. So
Yep.
jump
Absolutely.
on in.
Okay, well, first off, I appreciate you letting me come and hang out with you for a little while. We have a lot in common, different industries, but we are doing a lot of the similar things, even not
And it's
even though it's
scary,
not
kinda, right?
yeah.
And we're both smiling. We're like, we don't
Yeah.
do it. We're both smiling going, "Yeah, it's so many people need help," right? So
Absolutely. So, uh high school, college, uh, Air Force. I was in the Air Guard as a TAC-P, combat, killed in airstrikes, special operations. Came back, was working at a chemical plant. Went to school for engineering and hated it. Then I got into the trades, um, and it kind of I loved it. I loved the dopamine hits that you got from solving problems, being a problem solver, going into a home where the air conditioning is not working, and then leave, and the air conditioning is fixed. Uh, and you got to do it 3 or 4 times a day on a well operating company. Now, sometimes you did 12 times a day, and that's
it
not efficient. Uh,
it's Florida right now. It's hot as blazes. So those poor
mhm.
guys, they're working
Oh
awake
yeah.
hours,
Oh, it's
not even day or
crazy.
night.
It's literally so there was a couple times right before I became a service manager where I would get a phone call it was a pager back then. My pager would go off at 11:30 PM and I would go to a commercial plant they had a reactor that they had to fix this water cooled coil, and I was soldering on this thing all night long, and it was such thin copper that as soon as I'd fix one hole, another hole would develop a little bit further down the line. I ended up literally working on it until 8 AM the next morning, and then just instead of going home, I just drove to the shop and, went on to call my calls for the rest of that day. And that happened multiple times. And long story short, I became a service manager, and things needed to be automated because the things that were being asked of me, in order for me to do them, like, I literally would not be able to leave my desk for 8 hours, 5 days a week, and I might get them all accomplished. And I learned at that point how to automate things, and things that were taking 8 hours for me to do, because I would have to look over here, look over there. I had like one single monitor, like a little tiny thing sitting in the corner office. I mean, we're the epitome of an HVAC company. And I learned how to pull data from the GPS manufacturers information and automate the inputting that data into an Excel spreadsheet, and then create some automations inside of Excel where
Macros,
literally
baby. Woohoo!
exactly. I
And
didn't have a
VBA. You
clue.
remember VBA?
Yes, and I didn't. I was not
Geek alert.
like yeah, right. I didn't know this stuff. Like I was good at engineering, but I was not good. Like I didn't know Excel at all. And like you said, Google wasn't popping back then. So like I was on forums, chat forums, looking up this stuff, like asking people, how do I make this formula? And now I'm such a nerd. I literally have my whole mouse pad, which is the size of my desk, is shortcuts, Windows shortcuts, Excel shortcuts, and PowerPoint shortcuts. And most of these I already know by heart anyways, but that it just turned into the snowball effect of, I didn't know at that time, that point in my life in 2006 and 7, that that was going to be the beginning of a long life of building out automations and thinking about how to automate things. And now I'm to the point to where any task that's performed more than twice in a day, like I'm going to learn how to automate it and optimize it, automate it, and then delegate it. If, and that's kind of how it turned into, now there's 2 HVAC companies, 2 plumbing companies, 1 electrical company, an automation agency, podcast company, podcast production company. Like it's just snowballed into all these other things because I've been able to quote unquote buy back time by learning how to automate and optimize things.
There was a total plant there because he didn't know. So Dan Martell's book, which I'll put a link. I'm a book guy. I'll put a link to the Dan Martell book on Amazon. It's a great book, right? Because the idea behind it is, if you have to do it more than a couple times, 80% of something done by someone else is 100% awesome.
Yeah.
That's one of the quotes from the book. But I want, as a takeaway, right? So as someone who's not technical, it's more important to identify the things you're doing on a regular basis and then finding the right resource to get it off your plate or your team's plate or your office manager's plate than it is anything else. Because a lot of times your staff or your team, whoever's not listening, they just do what they're told or do whatever your
Yes.
standard operating procedures. They're not thinking of plussing your operation. They're just thinking, I got to do this 50 times. And you're
Mhm.
saying, we talked about, I had an accountant who we track, and we'll talk about in a second. We track kind of our people's time against projects. And so we use QuickBooks projects as a thing.
Okay.
And so I was like, why is this taking so long? Why? It's automated, automated, automated. I found out 2 months ago that they weren't automating. They were doing it by hand. So that each one of 30 people working on 12 clients a day for different periods of time, someone was putting that into QuickBooks. And I was like, this is insane. So I I found a company that puts transactions from a Google sheet or an Excel sheet into Excel. So I can do 3,000 transactions in 5 minutes, or I can do 3,000 transactions in a month,
Yeah.
which one makes a whole lot more sense.
Oh, 100%. And it removes the human error aspect of
Oh,
it as well.
yes.
So
Yeah,
that's
you
the,
can't factor that enough, right? Because if they're gonna touch it, right? If your tech touches it, your billing manager touches it, and someone checking on invoices checks it, you got 3 spots to find out a way that, holy crap, there's a chance for mistake.
yeah. And creating the automation, there is, so like we talk about automating job summaries that are going into a CRM. So like your CSR is calling, or they took an inbound call, they're taking down the notes, and then the technician has to read, like just decipher what's going on every single time. Instead, if you create an automation, then it's going to take that information, plug it into something, maybe Chat GPT, and then spit back out the consistent data. And then every single time the technician knows, okay, my arrival time is set right there. This is the thing that the homeowner said, that this is the issue. And it's always the same one. It's the same color. Like you can, do some HTML coding on stuff, and all that stuff is automated. And it takes the extra search time, and it's not a lot, but a little bit, a lot turns into a lot, you
Well,
know,
and think about it, right? So if you're training a new tech, this is how we do it, and it's gonna be this way every time.
every time.
So now all of a sudden, you don't, my operations manager and I talk about people having hidden factories, right? So as an operations leader, your challenge is that what are the little things people are doing that you don't know about that you never find out about? So they're called hidden factories, and it's a huge because if you've got 10 hidden factories and they're taking 10 people an hour a day,
Yep.
now you could by relieving them in the burden, one, it's done right. Two, it's checked by someone as opposed to wonder if it's right or not. It's ad hoc. And then it's scalable. That's could be another you could afford to hire another tech or buy
Yep.
another truck or spend more money on ads or
Or heaven forbid you have to replace that individual. It's there. The process is there. They just have to follow the process to, to put in the initial data. And then, it's at that point, it's automated as much as possible. But like you said, you can't automate everything. The trades are not going to be run by AI anytime soon. Like AI is not going to replace us. For me, when I'm talking to individuals about AI, the conversation that we have is it's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you better CSR. If you allow it to, it's going to make you a better dispatcher. It's going to make you a better technician because now you don't have to worry about wording this invoice summary exactly right and making sure that you're not using industry jargon and you're making it so that it's comprehended on an eighth grade level of reading comprehension. Like you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore because it's completely being done for you. Now you still have to put the information in. You still have to be a good technician. You have to diagnose properly, but the monotonous work can be removed from your day-to-day operations. And I think that that's one of the things that I learned. You talk about the things, the good, bad, and the ugly. One of the things that I learned was that whenever someone gives me instructions, I am going to do exactly what they say, but I'm going to be like, hey, I noticed that I had to do this multiple times. Did you know there's a way that we can automate this process so that we don't have to repetitively do this, you know, just meaningless task over and over again. But I found that when I hired individuals remotely that were not, local individuals, they didn't do that. They were just going to keep doing that manual labor over and over and over
because they're
again.
thinking of their time, right? They're thinking of their paycheck, right? Not wondering, hey, there's 10 million other things that's on your to-do list. You just don't know about it, right? So that's
Right.
like,
And they're not presented to you. So like I have my agenda for things that you could possibly knock out for me, but all you see are the ones that I've actually presented in front of you. And so you're like, hey, I don't want to be not useful and like speed things along and then have to be laid off because I don't have enough work. In reality, like, yeah, that's the conversation that I had to have with individuals was,
it's a common misconception that people think, oh, AI is going to, we'll talk about the impact, right? People say, oh, it's going to impact my job. No, it's going to impact your ability to do your job. I have friends of mine in my mastermind. We talk about artificial intelligence, which is humans.
Mhm.
Right? Someone's still got to pull the plug, right? As they
Yep.
say, who knows where it's going to go? It's exciting times. We are in a true, I don't think it's a true, I guess we're in a transformational period, right? We're at the beginning of the steam engine. We are beginning of the of the industrial revolution. We are in the World War II world industrial machine. We are in the 60s of the introduction of the computer. The internet age is all happening again. And a lot of people are worried about it, which I understand. Hey, if you're listening to this podcast and you work at McDonald's and that's your career path, you need to think of another career path because
It's going
pretty
to get
soon you're just
automated.
going to walk up and talk to it. So they were already
Sure.
pushing buttons and now they're just going to talk to it. And they're going to have robots making, I just saw an article today that there's a Starbucks in South Korea that there are no people at. The entire operation runs by robots, by a company that makes robots, and they're trying to steal Starbucks robots. So, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. There's all kinds of kind of challenges with all of that stuff.
Certainly.
But we have to understand as kind of a small mid-market business owner, take advantage of it because if you don't, your competition will.
Hmm.
And you don't necessarily have to do everything, but you have to do something. And I want to, for listeners, he talked about something very specific, having the methods and procedures that they don't know about. So in our little business, in my little tiny little business, my group of people, I have 126 standard operating procedures. Say, oh,
That's
right.
wild.
So what is that? Well, one, it's intellectual property. So if my business gets sold, it's not Bryan and his brains, it's Bryan and his systems.
Mhm.
And so that customer acquisition is a system, customer care is a system, customer follow-up is a system, how you do jobs, how you dress, how you get truck service, all that stuff are systems. And by the way, I've been working on it for 2 years. It's in
Hmm.
August, it'll be 2 years. So it didn't happen overnight,
Yeah.
right?
Now, where are you storing these? Are you handwriting them out
So
or?
no, so the way we do it, everyone does it differently. So there's like standard formats of how SOPs work. We generally do things in 3 ways. People are all different kinds of learners. We will do a video that talks about how it gets done, right? And that's just it could be me and you having a conversation. It could be me walking through a piece of software. It could be me doing a role play with a certain how to deal with customer rejection. So there's a video capture of somewhere between 5, 8, 10 minutes, right? Something you can absorb that has a beginning, middle, and an end, right? Preferably some chances for success and chances of failure, right? So you have to think about it ahead of time. Then we'll create a checklist out of that. The checklist is okay. You got to make sure you know this, you know that, you know that, so
Mhm.
that again, those tactile learners can learn by, and they also can be a transcript. And then once we do that, we do screen captures with descriptions of how things go. So, and did we do that overnight? No, God, it took me 2 years.
Yeah.
So it started out as just videos.
Mhm.
And then someone goes, well, could I just make a checklist? I'm like, yes, you can make a checklist. And now with some of the AI, you can upload a video and say, make a checklist.
Yep. Mhm.
And then
There
the screenshots
there's
are a little
a
different. The
well,
screenshots are a challenge.
there's a platform that's called Scribe. Have you ever heard of that?
Yep. Scribe how? Yep.
I think that's it. Yeah. I've
Yeah.
used it
Scribe,
a
Scribe
couple
how?
of
Yeah.
times.
Scribe.
Yeah.
So the challenge with Scribe for me is that I've got, and I will say this out loud, we would have to re-record it because it follows your mouse as you go. So we're using it going forward, but it doesn't go backwards.
Mm.
So, because it follows you on your computer, so that's one
So
important thing. So we are using that, and if you have a chance, like for example, if you're teaching a tech on how to use a piece of software, you could just record as you go, and then as each step goes, you look at your checklists,
mhm.
and you just put in what you're talking about, and then I believe Scribe how even has some AI built
Yeah,
into it,
it
so
does.
it'll use the audio you created and then fill in the blanks, right?
And it's funny. It
So
is funny though, because my wife Julie just used it the other day, and she was like, "I didn't realize it, but if I hit the left button or the down button, because she was like scrolling through a website, it would say down, 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 and just keep writing the word
yeah,
down
exactly. It does
over and
exactly
over
what you're
again."
doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
True example. So my operations manager, we've been working on this one process. She spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks documenting it. Now it's what, not 2 or 3 weeks of
Sure.
continuous time. It's probably realistically, she'll probably have 2 solid days in it,
Okay.
right? Checking it. I did something similar in 45 minutes.
Wow.
Now, granted, I'm like, why is that? I'm a super user, right? I'm
He's a
CEO.
superhuman.
I'm Bryan the CEO, Bryan the tech
Yeah.
guy, Bryan the copywriter, Bryan the like. So I understand that there's some differences to that, and that
Sure.
doesn't always translate because it was something I knew, right? It was a topic on which I
Sure.
knew, and it was my training.
Mhm.
But we did that to demonstrate. Sometimes like, this is a Dan Kennedy thing. Done is version one is always better than version none. Done is better than perfect.
That is
So
true. That is a true
you can always
story.
go back and make it better, but you can't make it better if you never start.
That's a good point. And
So
the one of the things that I learned in the optimization process in general, and I'm sure you've heard this before because we run in the same crowds of teachers,
literally,
but that literally we do. And I don't know how we've never met before, but um, the creating the process, and even if you're like, I learned this way before OpenAI was around or anything like that. And that was having one person, the person that does this job every single day or whatever, write out all the steps of the process or record a loom and have it transcribed step by step. And then give that checklist, that step-by-step checklist to someone who's never done the job before. Let them do it. And then the moment they get stuck somewhere, then notate where they got stuck and then give it back to the first person. Let them
you're
redo
never
the
gonna
whole
get it
thing.
right on the first time. It's
No,
impossible,
no,
right?
yeah,
'Cause
absolutely not.
and so this is funny because I have a lot of team in the Philippines, and so they're very conscious about making mistakes, right? And so my opportunity, one of the reasons why I like them to do videos when they do their stuff is that if they make a mistake, it's probably a mistake that everyone else is gonna do. It's gonna do the same thing. And
Yep.
it's less important. We all make mistakes. We're just humans.
Yeah.
The idea is you need to identify, hey, oh, look, this is a mistake. Look what I did. I forgot to do this. And when you do that in a training video, this is me personally, it feels more authentic, like you're looking over someone's shoulder as opposed to some super produced, right? Listen, I'm not running a $300 million HVAC company with a staff of 1,000 people
All
in
right.
10 locations, right? My team is remote. I've got
Mhm.
4 managers, Bryan, and 3 different groups of people doing stuff. Let's be real.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure they're doing their job. But if they make a mistake, let's learn from it.
Yeah.
Like, let's just figure out how to make it better because it's good, good, better, best. But if you never get started, version none.
That is the thing about it because there's so many people that I talk to and Josh and I became known as the people who built automations in the trades. Like that's just kind of what we got known
That's
as.
a genius, by the way. There's a genius niche because
Well, yeah, there's not
so many
many
things
people
that
that
don't
do it.
happen that should happen. You're going, why is this happening? Well, because we never thought about it.
Or you've done something and it worked great, and then you just stopped doing it because it was a manual labor type thing. Like there was a period of time where every time we did a change out or a system replacement that was over $5,000, we would call Miss Mary, and she has a mobile massage therapist. It's not a mobile masseuse. I always say that, and she's like, "That's not the right word, Tersh." And I was like, "Okay." She said a mobile massage therapist, and they would trigger for her to call. Well, we would manually, you'd send her an email. She would manually call the homeowner, set up appointments, and we got the most raving reviews because we're hoping to de-stress during a stressful time because you're just
No
replacing air
fun. Nobody
conditioning
wants to
units.
buy an air conditioning unit. I can tell
No,
you that is not.
absolutely. Yeah.
You're not going on a cruise. There's
Yeah,
no enjoyment.
exactly. Exactly. So that was our whole thing. And so we were getting raving reviews from doing this. And it literally was at the very most $500. And we were averaging like $9,000 on these system placements. So it wasn't a big hit to the bank. We just stopped doing it because it was a manual task where we didn't have an automation built out.
Of course,
And
it
then
worked. It created goodwill and gave you good referrals. So let's stop doing it. Genius.
100%. Yeah,
Of
100%.
course,
Yeah,
everyone stops doing stuff that works. Then they go,
exactly.
why did we stop doing it?
I don't
So
know.
we
It
stopped
was
doing it
manual labor.
because Mary left, who was making the phone call,
Yeah.
and no one said, right. That's why you need systems.
Uh-huh.
And Tersh, I'll send you my book. I talk in my book, which is from what I learned for 25 years ago, how we built process oriented marketing. This is before automation, right?
Yeah.
And so everything had a system, everything had a touch, and I didn't realize I wasn't some genius. I was just in a lot of pain, and that's
Right.
how systems get bought, right? So if you think
Mhm.
of back to the E Myth, I didn't
Yep.
even know the E Myth until 10 years after I sold my business. I was like, I wish I knew this 10 years ago. By the way, the book was out. I just never thought about personal development. I
Sure.
knew everything. What the hell do I need personal development for?
Right.
Why
Right.
do I need to go to trade shows and learn
Mm.
from people? Shit, I knew all this stuff myself.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was complete crock, right? But so the idea is like, hey, have a business. I use the term in the book, meaningful scale. Hey, not everybody wants to be in. You're probably in 2 locations with 3 different things and 5 different. But not everyone wants that, right? My wife's
Mhm.
an interior designer. She's very successful. It's her and an assistant. That's all she wants. She doesn't
And
want a staff.
that's perfect too.
And oh, by the way, the business is quite does very nice because we make clients audition. We don't just take any job that comes, and we're living in a fluid market. Our
Right.
average transaction size is higher, but we work very hard to get,
Mhm.
and we don't even go after the biggest whales in our market. So that's even crazy, right? So if people buy a $3 or $4 million house, it's their third or fourth home. There are people that buy 20 or $30 million houses that are their fourth or fifth home. We don't even bother with them. It's their pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But the people in the other market, they own one of her clients is an HVAC company somewhere in the mid-Atlantic states. Does
Okay.
very well for himself. I won't mention his name, but he has a very nice home. He did a very nice job. And thank you people for buying HVACs because he
Yeah.
left my family in some wonderful way last year. So,
Right.
but still I guarantee you his business has systems and processes
Got to.
and you don't need them all once. Right. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's the thing about it because I get asked all the time, whether it's systems or automation, like, where do I get started? I don't know where to get started. I'm overwhelmed with just the thought process. Like I've opened up Zapier and now I don't even know what to click, and sure, I've been there. Like I get it. For me, honestly, if I do the same task more than once in the same day, immediately it's on my to-do list to figure out how to automate that thing or delegate it, one or the other. But You can't do either one of them if the process hasn't been optimized. Like if you're doing it different every single time you do it, fix that first, and you optimize the process before you try and automate it or then delegate it.
And then maybe explain. And obviously, so Tersh and I had a 30-minute conversation. We went all over the planet. You have no idea. So we're going to spare you guys from that. So for those of you that don't know Zapier, so let's just use, I mentioned like, taking, so, all right, I'm explaining me like an eighth grader,
Mhm.
right? So, and then maybe let's just say that somebody gets an email and it gets tagged and there's certain words in it, and it maybe goes to a project management system, or it may not go right into your, service delivery engine, like a Service Monster or whatever you're using, or House Call Pro or whatever
Yeah,
your
yeah.
kind of delivery engine is. But there may be other things that happen. Like, so maybe share a couple kind of simple examples that everyone who's going to listen to this should be thinking about.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them, especially revolving
Just
around
two or three, don't
email.
go crazy.
Okay,
'Cause we
I'll
don't have
just
all
say.
day. Like, I got to take a nap at some point. 3 o'clock's nap time. So,
Oh, okay. You are in Florida,
I'm wearing
so
shorts and a t-shirt. I wear shorts and t-shirts every day. So I
yeah.
don't I've got a box full of ties from Jersey. So I still have them.
That's funny. So with email automation, especially with Gmail and Outlook are pretty easy to do. Gmail is probably the easiest, but anytime a new email comes in and say it's from a particular person or it's got a particular topic or keywords in it, you can actually automatically within Gmail add labels to them, to the projects. And then that email, and then once a specific label is added, you can have it so it automatically forwards to someone else to do that, or you could have it added to like a Trello board, or ClickUp or something like that. If you have a project management tool, like say we have somebody's working on a project and they've approved the project and or they've approved a quote, and you got a quote approval email come from your CRM. Well, all of a sudden you can take that information and put it straight into the Trello board so that you're tracking that project, so to make sure that it's going along, progressing properly. And then you can build automations inside of the Trello board so that once it's moved from one row or one column to the next, it notifies a different person that's in charge of it. Maybe you have a project or a person that's in charge of applying for permits. And then once the job's completed, the person that's going to apply for the warranty, the extended warranties and the manufacturer warranties and those types of things. And so like it notifies each person along the way of the project, or, hey, look, this project's done, but we haven't collected the rest of the money. So that's going to send like a red flare up to everybody that's in accounts receivable. Like, we need to collect the money for this job and those types of things. And that's just right off the top of my head, not even looking at it.
One of the ones I use, if I flag an email in a certain way, it goes to my management team because it's usually a customer email. And so rather than me having to figure out how to forward it to everybody, I just drop it. I just give it a label, and then it automatically ends up in ClickUp for for the operations team. Say, hey, we need to deal with this.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those three people's job to do it. And then when we have our stand up, I go, hey, because my team's remote, they're in the Philippines, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
90% of my team has gone to bed. They're off. We work swing shifts, so they're off, except for the inbound people and the outbound people. But all the support people are, we want to have a quality of life so they can, get up in the morning with their kids, take them to school and stuff like that. What a shocker. So
right.
we identified a swing shift as a way to keep them on some US hours and not.
That's interesting.
It's worked out for us because then they don't want to stay up till 5 o'clock. I don't want to stay up till 7 o'clock in the morning. So, but they do need help and support. And so by that, they have access to the US folks and other stuff. But we found that's like, right. Cause I'm the chief arsonist and the chief firefighter. And I just literally put that episode up. It's funny because we entrepreneurs we create chaos. So a lot of times we are the guy lighting the fire so we can come in and save the day.
Yeah. We have hero complexes.
We have hero complexes, right? So, but by having some of these automations in place, it really lets you start to think about going, hey, if I got out of this, would my team be happier, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
you could also you can add a certain label, say, call it Slack. And all of a sudden, then it's going to send that email to a particular Slack channel or a Slack group, and then, start that automation process.
Right. Well, again, it depends on your library tools. So if you're a small 5 person shop. You're probably not using Slack. You're lucky if they're using email. They certainly better be using their CRM and their kind of service delivery engine. They typically are separate. I would think a lot of them are separate. Some of them are together. Some of them are not. It just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that there has to be some continuity in there. And these systems, especially the service delivery systems, the service monsters and the house call pros, those other guys, they really do a lot to try to prevent people from getting information in and out of their systems because they once you use it for everything, um,
Yeah.
no digs there at all. Because
No, not at all. And I understand the whole thought process behind it, but man, as a person who builds out automations, there's always just going to be this weird scenario that somebody wants that it doesn't make fiscal responsibility, like doesn't make fiscal sense for you to go and build this, add this to your API. If you would just open up your API, then we could build the automations and not have to bother you with it.
And then there's reasons why they want to close the ecosystem and they don't want to get too many Google
I get
licenses,
it.
whatever. But another story for another day. But Zapier, start simple. So on a scale of 1 to 10 API stuff, that's kind of a 10 or 11 on the complication scale.
Yeah.
You have to really understand.
Webhooks.
You got to understand, even webhooks are probably a 9, APIs are 10. Webhooks are easy ways to do it. But think about webhooks using grabbing emails is another great way. Like think of and work with guys like Tersh on how you can think about what is possible and then don't get overwhelmed, right? I had a conversation with my son who just graduated university and we talked about, like your job is to get a job. And so he's like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, no, we're going to do this for an hour or two. You're going to do this for an hour. And he's like,
it's just like eating an elephant. You just take one bite at a time.
Yeah. But if people freak out, my wife, she freaks out. And I just think of everything like, oh, it's just, cause we're working as CEOs, we're working on so many different things. My friends laugh at me and go, how do you have time to do a podcast? I'm like, I can't not do this. Cause
yeah, I mean, we're going to have conversations anyways, and we get to meet each other and talk and
think about all these people getting like walk away from this going, damn, if I could just automate one thing or two things, make sure when the service delivery engine did your technician say thank you? Did they ask for a referral? Did they kick off did they do the post install? Hey, listen, referrals are important to us.
Mm-hmm.
If you got something good to say, if I didn't do a good job, please let me know so I can fix it. Right. If there's any problems, if there's going to be problems, there's going to be problems in the next day. Because if something happened, I'm human. Just call us. We'll fix it.
Yep. And having that conversation with a homeowner, like when it's perceived to be working properly, it makes that breakage a lot easier to swallow.
Right.
For them, they're like, okay, they said that this could possibly happen, so I'm not thinking less of them because of this. And they blew me away with the rest of the service. So I believe it's just human error, and they'll take care of it. We had one where I feel like we went over and above. We provided a wow service all the way around, but we had a time with the equipment. It was a manufacturing issue. Man, if it could go wrong, it went wrong. The outdoor unit, the brand new outdoor unit we had just purchased had a leak in it. We didn't know that till they got to the job site. They had to go get another outdoor unit. The indoor unit, the blower wheel was vibrating. And the thing about this was a top of the line unit too. And it was just like we had upsold them on how great this equipment is, how efficient it is, how it's going to last. And they're like, are you sure that? Because like y'all talk a good game. We're satisfied with everything that you say. You've provided us with wow service. When you call, you answer the phone immediately. There's never any kind of guesstimation on what to expect. You've laid out the expectations very clearly. But here we are on the install day, and this is the third time that we're having this conversation. And I'm like, oh man. So immediately I'm like going into recovery mode of, hey, we've already installed the unit. I really don't want to, eat $10,000 because that's what the equipment cost me in the end, and the labor of doing it. Can I give you a 10-year extended warranty on top of the 10-year warranty that I've already given you? So parts and labor and everything, you'll be covered for the next, 12 years, no sweat, no money out your pocket, other than maintenances just to maintain the system. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, okay, how about I give you a maintenance agreement too for 10 years? And I'm like, please just don't make me take the system out. But it was one of those things where like,
But you can feel like you do that because you've earned their
yeah,
respect and you've earned that opportunity to do that, right?
yeah,
In fact,
exactly.
I'm going to do I mentioned a word. I'm going to jump in and plug for a future episode. We're going to do the client audition. So there's literally a method to that. So you're doing some other version of that. And the reason why that's important is because you've already gone through, you've earned the trust, you've gotten into their most secret space, their home. You've already kind of violated it because you ripped out stuff and you're fixing it. But because you did a client audition and you passed it, and now you're working together, it's much more, you'll have a much higher chance of coming up with an amenable solution. Now, that case, you're minimizing losses as opposed to maximizing profits.
Sure.
But you still, I'm sure you still made a profit, just maybe as less
We
as you
did.
normally would.
Yeah.
So it's a whole lot easier to make a little less profit and have a happy client than, because think of having the other guys just walk away and go, I can't do anything for it. Sorry, dude.
Yeah. Throw
And
your
then you never
hands
hear
up
from it.
and you already paid, we done the work. We did the work exactly like it says on here. Uh, Screw your peace of mind. Like we're
And I
good.
think it's honest. Mark Twain said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you say. So that's a culture. I'm a walking quote bomb. You have no idea. I read a lot.
That's funny.
If you and your team have that kind of singularity of goal and singularity of purpose, it's easy. I teach my team, and it's a challenge sometimes. What do I do if they ask a question that you don't know? They're saying, "Hey, that's a fantastic question. Wait, let me make sure I understand it. I know we have an answer to this. I just don't know what it is. Give me
Yeah.
15 minutes. I'll get back to you."
Yeah. And don't
And
lie
if I don't
about
know
it.
the
Like,
answer in 15 minutes, I'll call you in 15 minutes and tell you when
yeah.
I'll have the answer.
And setting that expectation and then following through with the expectation. And it's
Yeah.
not just in business, it's in life also. Like my kids, we have 4 kids. We haven't even talked about this really, but I have three boys and a girl, and they are the most behaved. They have the best behavior of any kids I've ever met, really. I mean, they, from the time they were born,
We all
literally,
say that.
I know. No, like there's some kids that are assholes. Like they're out there. Like they're just, and my kids have personalities. Like they are very dry sense of humor. One of them, the other one is not. Like they are all their own person. But one thing from the time they were little, they've all known that if my phone rings, to be silent, because that's like dad gets to come hang out with y'all at random times during the day because of the business that he all owns and operates, but he also needs to answer phone calls at random times of the day. So if you want dad to be able to come to these field trips and be able to do these things, hang out with you and your school kids and your friends at school, uh, understand that there are certain things that are important that dad just answers the phone call. And one of the things that I learned probably in the last 6 or 7 years, probably honestly, was with the kids to set the boundaries, but also follow through with them. So because we work from home, we're remote. My wife and I both work from home, with several of the businesses, and the kids have free reign, or the appearance of a free reign to dad or mom. Like, hey, mom's here, dad's here. It's the middle of summer. I get to go talk to dad anytime I have a question. Well, they now know, since then, this has been several years, like I said, in the making. If my office door is closed to my home office, then I am 100% in a meeting. You cannot knock on the door. Don't like text me. If my door's shut, off limits. But the moment I'm out of my meeting, the moment that we finish this conversation, I will walk over to my office door and I'll open it up. So then they know dad's office door is open. That means I can come in and ask him any questions that I have. And I
Good
will
for you.
take the time to do that. And if I ever say, hey, look, Addie, I'm getting ready to go into a meeting. This meeting should take me about an hour. Give me an hour and 30 minutes, and then I'll come hang out with you for an hour. And then at the hour and 30-minute mark, I'm going and hanging out with Addie for an hour. And I set an alarm because I tell her, look, I'm not going to keep looking at my phone to see what time it is, because it's my time right now is your time. but when this alarm goes off, just know that I have to get back to work. And she's okay with it. Perfectly.
Yeah, it's all about setting boundaries, right? So it's
Set that
just
expectation. And it's the same with clients, you know?
it's funny. I've had other conversations with other guests about, I think they're trying to create kind of this higher plane. And obviously there's a commonality with all those people. They're in masterminds, right? They're not just going to events. They're not selling masterminds. They're just in them
Yeah.
and they're trying to elevate. So the whole reason I did this podcast, like why, I came from tech and I was like, why am I focusing on home services? Because so many people, there's so much need for help and it's such a growing industry. And I think as my kids both graduated college, my oldest son has his dream job. He's in professional sports as an official. I don't want to say any more than that because he's also my editor.
That's
Hello. Yeah.
cool.
So he does that. He's, someone asked him 6 months ago, what's your dream job? He goes, I have it. Right
Yeah.
now, he's working through the ranks and doing his thing. But, and then my younger son graduated at university and he's going through stuff. And they both said to my wife and I, we love you, but we don't want to stay here. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, should I build an apartment above the garage? And they're both like, we love you, but it's time to, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I get it. But we have that kind of relationship, right? So having that, and it's funny that people that have that relationship with their families probably have that relationship with their team and they probably have that relationship with their clients,
Yep. Yeah.
right? Because
I
I'm really
believe so.
lucky that a lot of my clients, like we go do fun stuff together. We're in groups together. We do stuff professionally, yeah, but then we do fun stuff together because it's nice to do business with people. People do business with people they trust.
Hmm.
And, when you think about the transactions of, hey, who's gonna give me the best price on a service, whatever stuff, right? The bottom line is however you cultivate it, that's an opportunity for you to help somebody, right? I don't get to go to work. I get a chance to go help people every Monday.
Yep.
So if you think about that as a culture of the business, you're gonna have more success. You're gonna close more deals. You're gonna have better margin. You're gonna have less employee turnover, right? So all that stuff isn't an accident, but part of it is you got to help them do the stuff they want to do and not the crap they don't, which is why automations are fantastic.
Yep. I agree. Couldn't said it better. I
All
agree
right.
100%.
So because this is not a 6-day marathon exhibition of letters, because Tersh and I have been talking for about an hour, almost 2 hours now, and
Yeah.
my face hurts because I'm smiling and I'm laughing. I'm not kidding. Because this is not a video production. This is only a podcast. We're gonna have Tersh back. We're gonna talk about because we're gonna have another topic we didn't touch at all. And maybe if you want me to do it on your podcast, whatever.
Yeah.
Tersh also has a podcast. What's the name of that podcast again? I'm gonna include that in the show notes.
Service business mastery.
And so if you are in the plumbing, electrical, HVAC business and you want to learn some other perspectives, not just kind of this marketing mindset spin that I've been talking about of how to kind of elevate the business into the one you want and not the one you have. That's my whole thing is we want to help people think about new markets, new methods, and new mindset, right? So you are the sum of the 5 people you hang around with. So in some small way, I hope this podcast helps those of you that are listening. So thanks again so much for being here. Tersh, thank you for being here.
This
And
my
thanks to
honor.
our listeners. And then we'll see you guys on the next episode.